anymore. But I'm just curious what things you overcame that you thought were really fun.
Well, what they stopped at were word games. Word games, yes. Well, there's a paragraph in the beginning, I believe, of chapter 7 that neither of the previous translators translated, neither in 32 nor in 62. It parodies a pseudo-peasant style in writing. And actually, the online translators that you're referring to, yeah, they had a snip there. I mean, it said snip instead of that paragraph. No dictionary. It's a completely contrived language. No dictionary would help you with that. So they just stopped. I happen to remember that piece by heart. What we ended up doing, well, my having lived in Texas helped. We rendered it in sort of not very literate southern western style, which is, well, the country style, the country western style. I am not aware of any other rural dialect in this culture. So we had to improvise.
There were other bits of the book that were omitted from some of the earlier translations as well, yeah? I mean, not necessarily just for political reasons either, yeah?
Yeah, well, the censorship didn't, actually, if you look at the first translation, whatever was censored out later is there. The translators, or the publishers, we don't know that, skipped the paragraph here, half a page there. Sometimes the two translators skipped both of them. Other times, both translators skipped the same passage. Other times it appeared in the first translation, but not in the second translation, or vice versa. Our impression is that those were the pieces that they deemed too arcane, too Soviet, if you will, too unclear to the readers that are not Soviet. For example, both previous translations skipped From the Office, the introduction actually, which is just a page and a half, where they clearly arguing about it's part of the contemporary literary discussion, and they're clearly arguing against the association of proletarian writers that Helen mentioned earlier. Of course, no English speaker would know about that. Well, for one thing, by now it's a classic, so we didn't want to introduce any snips there. That wouldn't let us either. But also, it's just a funny piece. So what if you don't understand everything? Maybe I don't understand everything either. There could be references that are not clear to contemporary Russians. So what? It's funny, it's well written, so here it is. And then there's the internet where you can look things up.
And we don't really know why exactly people left, the earlier translators left things out. We can only really guess.
Any other questions? Yes?
Two. First, did you just start at the beginning and work serially until you got to the end, or did you move around at all? And was there a point at which you thought, oh, I give up, I just am not going to stick with this?
I'll start with your second question. No, there was no such point. We did not give up. Otherwise, well, first we did, for the editorial board, for some reason we did chapter 27. Turned out to be, and luckily the book has 36 fairly short chapters from 6 to maybe 12 pages. Turned out to be a great choice because there's a lot of references to world culture in that particular chapter. But when the contract was signed and when we started actually working on it, we went chapter by chapter, And it was very easy to break the work down because, or to plan ahead, like, 2 weeks for this chapter, 3 weeks for that chapter. That was very easy. And the reason for that was that the book, well, for one thing, why not? Well, it makes more sense logically to start from the beginning than in the middle. But also, the book is very well structured, masterfully structured. There are things that are repeated from chapter to chapter. Or there's something that is mentioned in chapter 3 and then shows up in chapter 16. So we had to, there could be various expressions, could be aphorisms, could be situations or characters. Like there's one character that appears in 4 different chapters from the first one to, I think, number 33 or something. We had to at some point decide what we do with this expression or with this character or whatever, and then do it the same way later. So it made, that way it made even more sense to go from the beginning to work. Vicky?
Would you do another one, and which one would it be?
Yeah, we would, on one condition, that it's funny. I'm not going to translate Dostoevsky. I mean, I like him, but this is so much fun. Can be.
Has this book been translated into any other languages aside from English?
Oh yes, many languages. I already mentioned the French translation. German, I mean, dozens of languages. Norwegian, for example. Japanese, you name it. Dozens of languages.
It would be interesting to translate from some other language backwards and see what it sounded like after several iterations.
Yeah, but we all know what the result is going to be.
Were many of those recent translations, or are they mostly?
Well, the book came out in the early 30s, so
Yeah,
a lot of those translations date back to either the 30s or maybe the 60s.
I think it was a new French one recently.
Yeah, and they do get retranslated, yes.
You mentioned that this project is also a little bit of translating from one culture into another. Did you ever find yourself adding material at any point in order to facilitate the cultural translation?
Minimally. We were avoiding footnotes. So there were some realia that asked for a little bit of an explanation, some personalities, for example. So a couple of times when the authors would just write, Lunacharsky did this or that, we would add the education commissar, Lunacharsky, which that's what he was. It's just that they don't say it because every Russian speaker at the time would know who Lunacharsky was. So instead of making the footnote, we just added that into the text. And there was one occasion we did get permission from EJ to do that, where a bunch of people who are dead drunk are singing a song and are weeping about their lives that are going nowhere,